Hello everyone, this is Prince here. Welcome to my channel. So today we'll be going over a game of Magnus Carlsen versus Liren, both super grandmasters. Alright, so this game is between them in the Magnus Carlsen Invitational game, and let's just dive right into the game. Alright, so Magnus Carlsen starts with the move d4. Liren responds with knight f6, and Magnus Carlsen goes with knight f3, d5, bishop f4, e6, Nbd2, bishop d6, almost a normal opening. And pretty much Magnus Carlsen is playing the London system. Bishop g5, pinning the knight on f6, bishop e7, e3, developing the bishop on e2 or even d3, castle, bishop d3, b6. b6 shows that maybe black may try to develop his bishop on b7, or even a6, trying to exchange the bishop on d3 somewhat, or even knight d7, c5, bishop b7 is a good idea. Alright, queen e2 by white, bishop b7, bishop into f6, bishop into f6. So there's an imbalance created because bishop is being traded for a knight, and h4, and d7, bishop into h7 seems little bit attractive, but it doesn't work because bishop into h7, king into h7, knight g5, check, and the only way to respond is king h6, and not much. Black is fine here. White can go with g4, black can go with king g6 because black wants to go to king g7 and balance out the position. But knight into f7, rook into f7, g5, king g7, g takes f6, queen takes f6, and pretty much black is fine here because white is a piece down and there's not much of compensation here. Alright, so let's go with okay, the move was played, that was knight g5, h6 played by black. So as there is no threat on h7 then. Alright, so next Magnus Carlsen went with the move f4 because he doesn't want to take his knight back and keep going the attack. Now here h into g5 seems pretty much a try maybe, but it's not good because of bishop h7 check, king h7, queen h5, king g8, h6 g5, and whatever black plays here, it's a mate because even g6, queen h7 is a mate, and even the rook e8 leads to queen h8 mate. Let's see if you feel so that bishop h7 and king h8 is a move, but nothing happens here because after queen h5 and something like bishop g6, there are a lot of threats, and even h g5 is a move here. Alright, so what Magnus Carlsen played here is c3. Black went with bishop e7, a different move, wasting one move with the bishop, but it's actually a good plan as the black knight on d7 can come to f6 and defend the king side. So Magnus Carlsen went with the move g4 here, trying to create an attack. Black went knight f6, white goes with e3. So e3 is a pretty much very unexpected move because there's a king side attack going on, and white goes with such a move which is not doing much, but it's a fine plan because if black plays something like c4 and b5, then he doesn't have b4 in his future. Alright, so rook c8 was played by black, queen g2 by Magnus. So queen g2 is just a maneuver, just getting the queen on the king side so he can create an attack. bishop d6, bishop d6 by black, and white plays knight f3, returning the knight back as there can be some sort of h takes g5 at some point. So white just took back the knight on f3, c takes d4, and c takes d4. Knight e4 is a good move. Knight e4 was played by black because he wants to stop the bishop from the h7 square, some sort of attack there, and also blocks the bishop, and the knight on e4 is quite pretty much good centralized. g5 by white, trying to open up the king side. h5 by Liren. Obviously h5 is to be played because h takes g5 doesn't seem a good move because of queen h3 and some sort of queen h8 mate ideas, which is pretty much undefendable. Doesn't look so good, so Liren goes with the move h5 here, and knight e5 by Magnus Carlsen, centralizing his knight and getting his knight on a better square. Obviously knight into d2 by Liren, and queen into d2. Obviously king into d2 doesn't seem that good because the king is in the center and some sort of queen 7, and if the queen ever enters this side, which can happen pretty much soon, it will be devastating for Magnus Carlsen. So after h5, knight e5, knight d2, queen into d2, which is to be played, and black goes with g6, defending his king side and locking down the king side. Obviously because black doesn't want any opening out there, and white goes with the move king f2, connecting both the rooks, which is quite needed. Also some sort of rook c1 can be played in future, and white is flexible and even the king is defended well. King g7 by black, defending g6 because there can be some sort of knight g6 and fg6 and bishop into g6 and bishop into h5, opening up the king side, which black doesn't want. And rook a1, queen e7, normal game. White plays queen e2, maybe some sort of bishop a6, trying to exchange the bishop, but that may not be the plan because the bishop is not so good compared to this d3 bishop. Rook c7 by black, doubling up the rook on the c file. Rook into c7, of course, queen into c7, and rook ad1. Rook c8 by black, rook d2 by white, and queen c1. Now queen c1 is a different move because it seems pretty much normal, but if queen comes on h1, it will be devastating for white because there can be problems for white here. So white defends here with the move queen into queen d1 and queen d1 and rook d1, eliminating the attacker and going into an endgame. Black goes with bishop d6 as bishop into e5, as white's knight on e5 is good because it has good squares and good hold on the black's camp. So bishop into e5, knight f into e5, and king f8, king e2, all normal moves. King e7, king d2, getting the king in the play, and rook c7, b4, trying to make some play in the queen side. And Magnus Carlsen can try something like a4 and a5. So this endgame pretty much seems bad for black because f7, e6, d5, all the pawns of black's king are on white squares, and the pawns of white e5, d4, e3, b4, g5 all pretty much seem good on the black squares as opposite of the black's bishop. So white pretty much seems fine in this game, and black's is also fine but doesn't seem so good, because if this bishop ever enters, then there can be a problem. So a6 by black and a4. Magnus Carlsen is keeping his cards of a5 and b5, maybe some play in the future. So rook c8 by Liren, rook f1 by Magnus Carlsen, trying to enter on rook f6 and plan something. So black goes with rook d8, saying that I'll play normally, because black doesn't have much of play because of the bishop on b7 is dead. Rook f6 comes with a plan. Now, why did black play rook g8? Because white may have some play after bishop into g6 and fg6 and rook g6 and rook h6 and rook h5, taking the pawns, sacrificing his one bishop for those pawns, and maybe getting to play for a win, because this bishop on b7 is dead. It will take time to come to bishop c6 and e8 and play on the king side. So white may have that plan. That's why black played the move rook g8 here. So after this, there can be some play on the queen side with a5, and if black goes with ba5, then a6 can always be a target, and d3 bishop will always be targeting a6, and the bishop b7 will always have to defend a6. So after a4, b5, rook f1, rook c8, rook c1, king c1, just a normal exchange, and bishop c6, king d2, king d7, and king e2, king e7. Not much of game here after bishop g6, which seems different, but it's not happening. It's nothing big, because it's still a draw after fg6, and whatever white plays, as this bishop is there and this king cannot ever come into white's camp on any of these squares, and all these squares are just pretty much locked for both the kings and the bishop. So king d2, bishop d7, king e1, bishop c6, king d2, and just normal play here, and it is pretty much a draw, and they both play some moves and they accept the draw at last. Alright, thank you for watching my video. If you like what I do and my work, please do like, share and subscribe. Alright, thank you.